There is a moment in every person's life when they must confront a very uncomfortable truth. No one is coming to save you, not your friends, not your family, not society. And in that silence, you are left with a choice: to stay still and hope for rescue, or to rise up and become your own savior. Growth does not happen by accident. It is not given, it is earned through sweat, through effort, through discipline. It demands a fire inside you that refuses to be put out, even when the world tries to suffocate it. This is not about chasing perfection. It is about obsessing over progress, small improvements, daily effort, relentless pursuit of a better version of yourself. In the monastery, we are taught that discipline is freedom, that suffering is not the enemy, it is the path, and you must walk it willingly. With every step, you prove something powerful, that your growth is not dependent on the world's permission, it's yours. It always was, so today, let this truth sink deep into your bones. If you want transformation, you must become obsessed with your growth. You must train like your life depends on it, because it does. Taking full responsibility for your life is the first and most important step toward personal transformation. It means shifting from a mindset of blame, dependency, and excuses to one of power, accountability, and conscious choice. Most people live their lives reacting to circumstances, waiting for something or someone to change their situation. They look outward for answers, hoping that fate, luck, or another person will intervene and fix what feels broken. But the truth is, no external force is coming to rescue you. This is a truth many avoid, but those who embrace it unlock a level of strength and clarity that most will never experience. When you take responsibility for your life, you stop outsourcing your power. You recognize that your circumstances, while influenced by many factors, are ultimately shaped by your responses, your decisions, and your habits. Even when life delivers pain, injustice, or setbacks, you understand that how you choose to meet those challenges defines your path forward. Responsibility is not about guilt or self-blame. It's not about criticizing yourself for what has gone wrong. Rather, it's about accepting that from this moment forward, your growth, your healing, and your success depend on what you are willing to do about it. It is the conscious act of reclaiming your inner authority and saying, I am in charge of what happens next. This mindset is powerful because it cuts through illusion. It forces you to be honest about where you are, and more importantly, who you are. It removes the veil of entitlement and expectation that someone will make things easier for you. It awakens your sense of agency. It puts the steering wheel of your life back in your hands. Once this shift happens, you start asking different questions. Instead of why is this happening to me, you ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of saying, I can't do this because of my past, you say, what can I do right now to move forward? The energy shifts from passive waiting to active creation. And this shift is where real transformation begins. Taking full responsibility also means recognizing your patterns. You begin to observe your thoughts, your behaviors, and your emotional reactions without judgment, and instead with a willingness to understand them. You notice where you tend to fall into victim thinking. You see where you make excuses instead of taking action. You become aware of how you sabotage your own progress by clinging to comfort or avoiding discomfort. This awareness is uncomfortable at first because it reveals how much you've been holding yourself back, but it's also liberating because it shows you the exact path you need to take. You realize that your power has been inside you all along. You just weren't using it. Another essential aspect of responsibility is accepting the consequences of your actions without trying to escape them. Every choice you make carries weight. Every word you speak, every habit you maintain, every boundary you ignore or uphold shapes your future. When you accept this fully, you become more intentional. You stop drifting. You stop living on autopilot. You start to become deliberate with how you spend your time, who you surround yourself with, and what you feed your mind and body. You begin to understand that your life is a reflection of the standards you set and the discipline you apply to live by them. People who avoid responsibility often seek comfort over growth. They prefer the illusion of safety rather than the truth of effort. But those who take ownership understand that growth is born in discomfort, that success is not the result of wishing, but of consistent work that no one else can do for you. This level of commitment doesn't come from external pressure. It comes from within. It comes from the moment you look in the mirror and realize that no one is more responsible for your future than you. Taking responsibility also means letting go of entitlement. Life does not owe you success. No one owes you recognition. The world is not obligated to make space for you. If you want something, you have to build it. If you want respect, you must earn it. If you want peace, you must cultivate it. This shift in mindset is what separates those who create powerful lives from those who remain stuck. Responsibility is the foundation of self-mastery. It is the seed from which discipline, confidence, and inner strength grow. You don't wait for motivation, you act despite your feelings. You don't wait for approval, you move with conviction. You don't hope someone sees your worth, you prove it to yourself through your actions. Consistent self-discipline is more powerful than motivation because motivation is fleeting, unreliable, and based on emotion, while discipline is a habit, a system, and a commitment you make regardless of how you feel. Most people wait for motivation to strike before they act. They wait for the perfect moment, the right mood, or some external spark to push them forward. But the truth is, that moment rarely comes, and even when it does, it doesn't last. Motivation is like a gust of wind. It can push you forward temporarily, but it cannot carry you to your destination. Discipline, however, is the internal engine that keeps going when the winds die down. Discipline is not exciting, it is not glamorous. It is doing the work when no one is watching. It is waking up early when your body wants to sleep, practicing when you'd rather rest, showing up again and again even when the results are not yet visible. It's about creating structure and rules for yourself, not because someone else is forcing you, but because you have made a decision to grow. Self-discipline is a contract you sign with yourself, a commitment that says your long-term vision is more important than your short-term comfort. It's the quiet power behind every great transformation, every success story, every extraordinary life. The reason most people fail is not because they lack talent or opportunity. It's because they lack the discipline to stay consistent when things become hard, boring, or uncertain. They chase motivation, get excited for a few days, and then quit when the excitement fades. But growth does not come from short bursts of intensity. It comes from daily effort. It comes from doing the small, difficult things over and over again, even when they feel insignificant. It's brushing your teeth every day, not once a month. It's practicing your craft every day, not only when you feel inspired. It's sticking to your plan, adjusting when necessary, and showing up with focus. Discipline is freedom because it removes the chaos of decision fatigue. When you have rules for yourself, you don't need to debate with your emotions. You don't ask, "Should I train today?" You already know the answer. The decision has been made in advance. This removes hesitation, eliminates excuses, and builds momentum. Every time you follow through on a disciplined action, you strengthen your identity as someone who is reliable, focused, and resilient. This self-trust becomes your foundation. You no longer rely on willpower. You rely on habits, and habits, once established, become automatic. They no longer require negotiation. The beauty of discipline is that it compounds over time. What starts as a struggle becomes second nature. The early resistance fades, and what once felt impossible becomes your new normal. The body adapts, the mind adapts, and suddenly, you're capable of more. You begin to respect yourself more deeply because you know you're living in alignment with your values and goals. You stop making promises you don't keep. You stop lying to yourself about tomorrow. You live with intention, not impulse. This internal consistency is where real confidence is born. Self-discipline also teaches you emotional control. When you commit to a process and follow it regardless of how you feel, you begin to detach from emotional turbulence. You realize that your emotions are not commands, they are signals, and you can acknowledge them without obeying them. You can feel tired and still train. You can feel frustrated and still focus. You can feel unmotivated and still move forward. This is the essence of mental toughness, acting with purpose, not emotion. And the more you practice this, the more control you have over your life. There is power in the mundane. Most of success is repetition. Most of mastery is boredom. The greatest athletes, artists, monks, and creators are not driven by constant inspiration. They are driven by discipline. They understand that greatness is built in the quiet, in the unseen hours, in the simple act of doing what needs to be done, without needing applause or immediate reward. They do not rely on mood, they rely on mission. When you live with discipline, you stop being a slave to your environment. You don't need perfect conditions to thrive. You don't need others to believe in you. You become self-reliant. You become strong from the inside out. And this inner strength radiates in everything you do. It shapes your posture, your presence, your performance. People begin to feel your consistency before they even hear your words. You stop chasing outcomes and start mastering your process. You stop talking about what you're going to do and start becoming the type of person who simply does it. Growth requires obsession because casual effort produces casual results. If you truly want to evolve, to rise above mediocrity, and to reach the heights of your potential, you cannot approach it halfway. You cannot be interested, you must be obsessed. Obsession is the internal fire that consumes hesitation and fuels relentless action. It's the state of mind where your purpose becomes non-negotiable, where your growth is no longer just a goal, it's a necessity. Obsession doesn't wait for the perfect time. It doesn't ask for permission. It moves forward with urgency, with intensity, with unwavering focus. Most people fail not because they don't have the ability to grow, but because they don't commit deeply enough. They dabble. They try something new for a few weeks, then shift their attention to something else when it gets hard or boring. But growth is not a sprint. It is a lifelong marathon of deliberate practice, consistent pressure, and endless refinement. Casual effort gives you small progress, if any. Obsession is what allows you to push through the pain, through the setbacks, through the long stretches where no one claps for you. It turns your focus into a laser. It makes your goals non-negotiable. You don't stop when you're tired. You stop when it's done. Obsession is not unhealthy when it is directed toward your higher self. It is not about being out of balance or neglecting life. It's about raising your standards so high that you cannot tolerate stagnation. When you are obsessed with your growth, you don't need others to hold you accountable. You don't need validation. You're driven by something deeper. There's a sense of inner urgency that doesn't fade when things get hard. You start living with a sense of mission, and that mission gives your life structure, energy, and purpose. True obsession is built on clarity. You know what you want, and you know why it matters. This clarity gives you the power to say no to distractions, to ignore noise, to keep your eyes locked on the path ahead. You start cutting out things that dilute your energy, pointless conversations, wasted time, empty habits. You stop multitasking and start mastering. Your days become deliberate. Your routines become rituals. Every hour is an investment in becoming more capable, more focused, more aligned with the person you are becoming. Obsession also gives you resilience, because when growth becomes your obsession, setbacks are just part of the path. You don't panic when you fail, you recalibrate. You don't give up when progress slows, you adjust and keep moving. The obsession acts like armor. It protects you from doubt. It shields you from the need for external motivation. It becomes your internal compass, pulling you forward even in the dark. You become harder to break, not because life gets easier, but because your inner fire refuses to die out. There's a shift that happens when you become obsessed with growth. You stop asking if you're capable. You stop waiting for signs. You stop overthinking. You start acting. You start learning. You start adapting. And through that process, you grow. Not just in skill or knowledge, but in identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries, and start seeing yourself as someone who transforms. You become a builder, a sculptor of your own future. And every day you chip away at who you used to be, replacing it with someone stronger, wiser, more focused. Obsession doesn't mean rushing, it means being all in. It means waking up with intention, working with intensity, and going to sleep with a clear conscience, knowing you gave your best. It means living in alignment with your highest values. And when you fall short, which you will, you don't spiral. You self-correct. You reflect, adjust, and re-engage. This kind of consistency cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It is earned in silence, in solitude, in sacrifice. Being obsessed with growth changes how you see challenges. Instead of running from discomfort, you chase it. You understand that the obstacle is the training ground. The resistance is the teacher. The discomfort is the doorway. You begin to seek out opportunities to stretch yourself, because you know that's where the real transformation lies. You realize that growth lives outside of ease, and once you taste the strength that comes from doing what others won't, you can never go back to average. The world doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. It rewards those who are so committed to becoming more that they will not let anything or anyone stand in their way. Obsession is the difference between trying and becoming, between wishing and creating, between almost and actual. When you become obsessed with your growth, life doesn't get easier, but it becomes more meaningful, more purposeful, and more powerful. Solitude is your training ground because it strips away distractions, noise, and validation, leaving you face to face with your raw self. In a world addicted to noise, constant communication, and the opinions of others, solitude becomes rare, and yet it is in solitude that true transformation begins. When you are alone, there is no one to impress, no social mask to wear, no external approval to chase. You are left only with your thoughts, your habits, your discipline, and your inner world. And it is in that space that clarity begins to form. Growth does not happen in the crowd. It happens in the quiet hours when no one is watching. The problem with most people is they cannot sit still. They are so overstimulated and distracted that they never truly meet themselves. They don't understand their patterns, their weaknesses, or their triggers because they're too busy escaping into entertainment, social media, or endless talking. But when you commit to solitude, even briefly, you begin to reconnect with your instincts. You begin to hear your inner voice. You start asking deeper questions about who you are, what you want, and where you're going. That internal dialogue is the foundation of self-awareness, and without self-awareness, there is no real growth. Solitude is where you sharpen your discipline. There's no one to hold you accountable in private, and that's exactly where your real character is built. Do you still train when no one is watching? Do you still hold your standards when there's no applause? Do you still execute your routine when no one is keeping score? These are the questions that solitude answers. And the more you can maintain consistency in isolation, the stronger and more reliable you become when you step back into the world. You stop relying on external motivation and build an internal fire that can't be extinguished by circumstance. Greatness is built in silence. It's forged in lonely mornings, in late nights, in spaces where no one claps. The monk, the athlete, the artist, they all train in solitude. They do the work others avoid. They fall in love with repetition, with refinement, with self-imposed standards. Solitude teaches you to be content with the process rather than chasing results. It teaches you to respect the journey, to become obsessed with getting better, not for praise, but for purpose. You become someone who doesn't need to show off progress because you know the real work is happening where no one sees it. In solitude, you also develop emotional strength. You learn to sit with discomfort rather than run from it. You face your doubts, your fears, your insecurities head on. This is where inner resilience is born. Most people avoid this process because it's painful. It's easier to drown out the noise with distraction than to confront the truth of what needs to be improved. But if you want to grow, you must be willing to look in the mirror and be brutally honest. Solitude gives you the space to do that. It is the testing ground for your mindset, your discipline, and your vision. There is a sacred power in being alone and at peace. When you can train, work, and build without needing anyone to notice, you step into a different level of strength. You're no longer doing things for show. You're doing them because they are part of who you are becoming. You're operating from identity, not performance, and that shift makes you unshakable. You no longer need external structure because you have internal order. Your solitude becomes your sanctuary, a place not of loneliness, but of alignment, a place where your intentions, actions, and values come into harmony. Solitude also teaches you focus. Without constant distraction, you begin to pay attention to details. You notice how you breathe, how you move, how your thoughts shift. You start to direct your energy rather than scatter it. You become more present, more aware, more efficient. In this space, you learn to build momentum that is pure, not driven by urgency or fear, but by clarity and commitment. The more time you spend in solitude with purpose, the sharper your mind becomes. Your decision-making improves, your confidence grows, your presence deepens. Eventually, you reach a point where you no longer fear being alone because you've turned solitude into strength. You don't need noise to feel alive. You don't need validation to feel worthy. You don't need distractions to feel at peace. You carry your purpose with you, and it becomes your guide. This is what makes you powerful in any environment. You've done the inner work, you've trained in silence, you've mastered the ability to be alone without being lost. And that mastery echoes in everything you do when you re-enter the world. People feel it, not because you say it, but because it radiates from your being. No one is coming to save you. The world will not hand you growth, greatness, or peace. You must claim them through relentless effort and deep inner work. It begins the moment you take full responsibility for your life, when you stop waiting for change and start becoming the change. It continues through the quiet power of self-discipline, choosing consistency over emotion, and showing up whether you feel like it or not. It demands obsession, not interest, a level of commitment that burns through resistance and refuses to settle for average. And it is in solitude that you sharpen this path, away from praise, away from applause, forging the mindset and habits that make you unstoppable. The journey is yours alone. Embrace it fully or stay where you are.